All right, go time. Black representation has failed generations. It has failed me. It cannot fail the future. I think about growing up as an adolescent, just being brought into this world with the thought of being innocent, um, expecting the same opportunities as everyone else, really believing that opportunities come to those that create them. I didn't realize that I wasn't going to be able to see that reflection of myself anywhere around. That the representation that could encourage me and give me the ability to be more ambitious as a person was not something that I seen daily. It was a mental defeat and a mental blocker. But also for me, growing up and being brought up in the communities that I come from, I didn't know that I had an identity already. And even though that I was still seeking to figure out who I was, the world had already determined that. I think about the communities and the lack of how being born on the east side of Kansas City, Missouri divided, had already been divided by a system that was going to have this innocent man or innocent young man defeated. No direction, no hope, no representation. On top of that, the community that I come from, it was only two ways out of it. You either face death or it was imprisonment. Was this something that we could change? Probably with representation. But because the images that were portrayed to me growing up as a youth really spoke to this being our reality. I think about that embedding into like my thought process. And as I would embody it growing up, right? My life as a teenager was one of someone trying to find an identity, one that really faced the identity that others had portrayed and put onto me. This wasn't who I wanted to be. This is what all I saw. I remember early elementary school when I was introduced to a movie called Roots. That was the first time and potentially the last time that I wanted to see a person like me facing oppression. So I gravitated to things that spoke to not only my identity that I saw or reflected upon, I also gravitated to the image that surrounded me daily. That image, for the most part, wasn't something that was glitter and gold. What it was an image of people that looked like me rising above oppression. Maybe the direction of that wasn't particularly what we would say is successful, but it was a lot better than where we come from. And when you have a mindset that lacks representation for you to grow, you fall into the only things that you know. I look at my pictures and I share this one a lot because it was a dark cloud in my eyes. And frankly, I felt like this was the best time of my life. I remember truly believing that I was on this earth to either face death by a gun or be in prison because I was trying to be better than the circumstances that I was born into. I didn't die though. See, I was shot multiple times to my abdomen, which left me with a spinal cord injury that paralyzed me from the waist down for the rest of my life. I was okay with that though. I wasn't okay with the fact that I was still living. I was okay with dying at that moment. That was my fate. That was the identity. That's what had always been represented to me as a black man. But see, now something has changed. I have a disability. This is a new world. This is something that I wasn't used to. Yet alone, when I entered this world, I realized that there was lack of representation of me there as well. I didn't have someone that I could actually see myself being as a person living with a disability. Because the representation that was portrayed to me, well, it wasn't somebody that could see themselves living in my shoes. I don't mean walking in my shoes from a disabled standpoint. I mean living as a black man in America, and then having to live as a black disabled man in America. You can't tell me that that I can just fall into the representation of anyone if I can't relate to if they cannot relate to my story. See, where I come from, you don't make it out. There's two ways. So what I relate to is completely different than many people. The struggle that I went through is a struggle that I gravitate to when I listen to other people share their stories. Well, if you don't have representation because the fate is so real that you either die or go to jail, then how can people coming from the communities I come from actually grow? If there's not a story we can reflect on, that's a story that we don't relate to. The difference with me was that when I was shot, I was also a father. I had got sole custody of my daughter several months before my injury. Yet alone did I know that through all this pain, all of this hurt, she didn't see the defeat that everyone else saw, that I saw. She didn't see the hopelessness. All she saw was her father. I didn't understand that people come into your life and it's a reason why. Like, I didn't get it until I had a precious life looking at me differently than the world saw me, than I saw me. But with that being said, the moment of my injury, I went back to do some research. And I was wondering, why did I need the strength from a little girl when I look at statistics, especially around the time of my accident, there was a lot of representation that looked like me. It just wasn't shown. And in Missouri alone, the statistics show that not only there's the number of black citizens, disabled citizens, is pretty high. The percentage of people living in poverty with disabilities is also high. Those are two demographics that I can really relate to. So why wasn't it shown to me? Why wasn't it shown to me that if these numbers were so high, that there could be some type of positive representation to show me that there was a better way than for me to only face this as defeat? But again, with the lack of that representation in the disabled community, the lack of the representation in the black community, it took a little girl to give me strength. It took her to see something different. That gave me the ability to see myself differently. There's a quote that I go by Gandhi. It says, "Be the change we wish to see in the world." You've heard my story. All I've expressed is the defeat, the trauma, the tragedy. This is my success. See, I had to realize that I needed to be the person I kept looking for. And that even though in the world I couldn't find a positive representation of someone that came from where I come from, I have that ability because I am still breathing. And I know for a fact that we all have a purpose in life. And maybe my purpose was to go through the struggle. Maybe my purpose was to not be able to gravitate to representation that helped me grow because I was it. I look at my life differently now because I look at the things I did the moment I stopped seeking for the person I was already becoming. I became that representation. I am that representation. Do I see myself as being the only one? No. But I see my story creating more. My story gave me the ability to face the man that shot me on national TV. None of that would have happened if I didn't see my purpose in life bigger than me. If I didn't recognize and realize that we didn't have representation. We didn't have someone to show us strength, that we could face things the moment we take accountability of everything in our lives. No matter what that thing may be. It could be someone that changed the trajectory of your life. But when you have the ability to accept, let go, you become something that you never believed that you could be. You find power because you become humble and grateful. I was grateful for the position I was put in because I would never be able to represent my community the best way I can today. None of that made me face that man that put me in this position and hate him for that. What it did was allow me to realize that the lack of representation in our communities is what created the mindset and created that situation that day. My actions and emotions is the reason why I reacted. His understanding and knowledge is the reason why he did. How do we change that? Representation. We give people the ability to have strength by showing them a reflection of themselves, but in a positive way. No one can be judged by their situations or circumstances that they have been brought into this world on. It is up to you, though, to change that. And if you cannot find someone around you, you have to be that. That's the way life works. But as I think about us and what we can do, there are many things that everyone needs to take time to do today, tomorrow, and even in the future. Understand that our legends die young as black men. There's not one person that I look up to that's here today. That is our reality. Is that the moment that some of our leaders speak up, become who they are, that's it. That's their legacy. So represent us now while we're still here. Take time to listen. Stories all over the world speak on the same thing. Speak on lack of representation in all communities. I may be speaking primarily about the black community, but representation is needed everywhere. It shows us something different and is a reflection of all of us. Take note. We are more likely to identify with someone who looks like us and better able to imagine our own potential. Everyone should have characteristics or images they can relate to. It's realistic. And everyone should be able to see themselves as heroes. The fact that I'm speaking on representation is because the conversation of Black Lives Matter is one that we are facing every day. And we are constantly seeing things unfold in our country that, as a Black man, I'm not proud of. I'm not proud of the hurt and pain that I constantly have to watch. I have not seen a moment that I could really embrace being Black, because I'm constantly fighting to be the representation for other people that look like me to be able to embrace being Black. But this is not something that I could do alone. This is not something that is just going to happen overnight. But this is a step that we take so that our future leaders are more diverse than the leaders that we have today. That our voices matter in the way that we see this world becoming. And that we can all come together and be better. But it takes all of us to recognize that we are all different, that cultures matter, and representation is the way to create an identity for people that don't have one. Thank you.